In 2005, one man told his investors something insane. He said the entire American housing market was going to collapse. Not dip, not correct. Collapse. Every bank disagreed. Every economist disagreed. The Federal Reserve disagreed. His own investors begged him to stop. He didn't stop. 3 years later, he was right. This is the story of Michael Burry, the man who saw the end of the world economy coming, and nobody would listen. Michael lost his left eye to cancer before he turned 2 years old. He grew up with a glass eye that drifted slightly out of place. Kids noticed. Kids are cruel. He struggled to make friends. He struggled to read people. He thought it was the eye. For most of his life, that's the story he told himself. The eye made him different. The eye made him alone. He found something that didn't care about eye contact: numbers. In second grade, he didn't play with his toy Jeep. He researched the actual company that made it. By high school, he was investing real money. His own money. While other teenagers were worrying about prom, Michael was reading balance sheets for fun. He went on to study medicine, became a doctor, trained in neurology at Stanford. But here's the strange part. He didn't actually enjoy being a doctor, not because of the science, because of the people, the small talk, the bedside manner, the constant social performance. It exhausted him in a way medicine itself never did. So at night, after 14-hour hospital shifts, he did something most exhausted doctors would never do. He stayed up taking apart his own computer just to put it back together faster. And he started a financial blog, just to write down what he saw in the markets. People started reading it. Real investors. Serious ones. One of them was Joel Greenblatt, a legendary value investor. He was so impressed by a doctor's stock-picking blog that he helped fund Michael's first hedge fund. Michael named it Scion Capital, after a fantasy novel he loved as a teenager. By 2004, he was managing $600 million. And then he found something nobody else was looking at. Mortgages. Not the mortgages themselves, the fine print underneath them. He started reading the actual prospectuses, the legal documents behind mortgage bonds. Documents so long and so boring that even the lawyers who wrote them barely read every page. Michael read every single page. What he found terrified him. Banks were giving home loans to people who had no real way of paying them back. Loans with teaser rates that would explode within 2 years. And then those risky loans were being bundled together, packaged up, rated as safe investments, sold to pension funds, sold to retirees, sold to everyone. Michael did the math. And the math said this entire system was a house of cards. So he made a bet that had never really been made before. He used something called a credit default swap. It's basically insurance. Insurance that pays out if mortgage bonds fail. Nobody was buying that kind of insurance on a market this size, because nobody believed the market could fail. Michael believed it would. He convinced banks to sell him billions of dollars worth of this insurance. The banks were happy to take his money. They thought he was crazy. They thought it was free money for them. But here's where the story gets hard. Insurance costs money every single month, whether you're right or not. Michael had to keep paying, month after month, while the housing market kept climbing, while everyone around him kept saying he was wrong. His own investors panicked. They saw the payments going out and nothing coming back. They thought Michael had lost his mind. They demanded their money back. Michael refused. He had locked their capital in for a reason. He knew if he let them pull out, the bet would collapse before it had time to prove itself right. This caused what's now called an investor revolt. People accusing him, threatening legal action, calling him reckless, calling him broken. And through all of it, Michael kept doing one thing. He updated his spreadsheets every single day, tracking mortgage delinquency rates, watching the cracks form in real time, while Wall Street partied, while home prices kept rising, while the entire financial world told him he didn't understand how markets worked. In 2007, the cracks became visible to everyone. Subprime borrowers started defaulting, exactly the way Michael predicted. The mortgage bonds Michael had bet against started losing value, fast. By 2008, the system Michael warned about collapsed completely. Lehman Brothers fell. Banks that had mocked him needed government bailouts to survive. Millions of people lost their homes. The world fell into the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression. And Michael's bet paid off. Not a little. Enormously. He personally made $100 million. His investors, the ones who stayed, made over $700 million combined. He had been right, completely right, about something almost nobody believed was possible. But here's the part most people don't know. There was no big celebration, no parade. Michael described it later in his own words. Even when it was clear I had been right, there was no triumph in it. His investors didn't thank him. Most of them stayed silent. Some never forgave him for the stress of those years. And not long after, Michael quietly shut down Scion Capital completely. He returned the money. He walked away, at the absolute peak of his success, while the rest of the world was just beginning to understand what had happened. Years later, Michael learned something about himself that reframed his entire life. His son was going through testing as a child. The testing came back positive for Asperger's syndrome. At first, Michael resisted the idea. He thought his son was simply like him, so he read the books about the condition to understand his son better. And somewhere in those pages, he stopped reading about his son. He started reading about himself. The difficulty with eye contact, the intense, narrow focus on subjects most people found boring, the discomfort with small talk, the need to be alone. It wasn't the glass eye. It had never been the glass eye. In his own words, I thought I was different, but this was saying I was the same as other people. The very thing that made him struggle to fit in as a child was the exact same thing that let him see what nobody else could. While the world followed the herd, his brain didn't know how to follow anyone. It only knew how to follow the data. And in 2005, the data was screaming. Michael Burry didn't predict the 2008 financial crisis because he was lucky. He predicted it because he read every single page nobody else wanted to read, and he kept believing the math, even when every single person around him said he was wrong.